All right, now one of the interesting things about object blends is that when the two extreme shapes are far apart from each other, as they are in this case, we have this thing called the spine in between. And to see that spine, I'll go ahead and select it using the white arrow tool, that's very important, by marqueing through the central portion of the intervals like so, at which point you will see this path outline between the center of the square and the center of the circle. And that is the spine, incidentally. And what it amounts to is the path along which the blend progresses. And now notice, if I go up to the object menu, choose blend, and then choose reverse spine, that'll reverse the direction of that path, and it'll also reverse the direction of the entire blend, as you can see here. And by the same token, if I go ahead and grab this anchor point at the end of the path outline, this is the end of the spine, and this is the beginning, incidentally. If I go ahead and drag this anchor point down and to the right, I'll move the circle along with it, and the same goes if I drag the first anchor point, I'll move that rounded square. All right, that's not really the effect I'm looking for, however. And so I'll go up to the File menu and choose the Revert command in order to restore the document that we saw at the beginning of the movie. All right, now what I want you to see here is the distance between the intervals. Notice that they're packed more tightly here at the end of the blend toward the circle than they are toward the beginning of the blend at the rounded square. We can control that by modifying the spine. So I'll once again marquee in an empty portion of the illustration, as you're seeing here, just through the intervals, so that we're selecting the spine without the circle or the square. And now what I want you to see is that this is just a straight path outline. We've got a corner point at one end and another corner point at the other, no control handles whatsoever. But if we were to add control handles, then we'd have greater control over both the direction and the speed of the blend. And to demonstrate that, I'll go ahead and click and hold on the pen tool and choose the anchor point tool from this flyout menu, or you can press the keyboard shortcut of Shift-C. Now I'll just go ahead and drag from this corner point in order to draw forth a couple of control handles, so we now have a smooth point. And I'll drag from this guy as well. And it appears I was moving in the wrong direction both times, but if that happens to you, all you have to do is reverse your direction, as I've done. And now notice if I press the A key to switch back to my white arrow tool, then I can go ahead and drag these control handles in order to modify the direction of the blend, like so. Another option is to keep your control handles aligned with the path outline, and that's going to require me to drag a couple of times, in which case you'll end up with a straight blend, as we're seeing here. But notice as I move the control handle, I'm changing the distance between the intervals, so I'm actually controlling the speed of the blend. And at some point, I'll see that the intervals are more or less evenly spaced. Now, the other thing I want you to notice at this point is that we have some lumpiness. Can you see that there? Right at the top of these early shapes. And the reason for that is if I go ahead and click on a square to select it, and then I'll drag one of these corner widgets in order to return the shape's sharp corners, then notice that it has a total of 4 anchor points, and they're all located in the corners. Compare that to the circle, which has anchor points at the top, the bottom, and the 2 sides, if that were to say we were looking at a circle instead of a pie. All right, now I'll go ahead and switch to the ellipse tool so that I can see my live shape widgets. And I'll go ahead and drag this pie widget so the two are aligned with each other to restore a circular shape. And notice now how smooth things are. And that's because, at least in my case, the anchor points have moved, so that, in other words, the ellipse is rotated 45 degrees. And to show you the difference here, I'll go ahead and hover my cursor close to, but not directly on, one of the corner handles. And I'll press the Shift key as I rotate this shape into its standard orientation so that I have anchor points at the top, the bottom, and the 2 sides. And notice now that we have a little bit of lumpiness going on. So we've got these kind of points at the top of our initial intervals. Compare that to what happens if I rotate the shape 45 degrees so that the anchor points are now located in the corners. And I have corners in air quotes, by the way, because we don't really have corners with an ellipse, but we do have anchor points at analogous locations. So in other words, those anchor points match the locations found inside the square. And as a result, we have these very smoothly transitioning intervals. And that's because object blends rely on anchor points in order to do their work. And we'll see more about how that affects real-world blends in future movies. All right, I'll just go ahead and press Control-Shift-A or Command-Shift-A on a Mac in order to deselect my artwork, and I'll turn off the guides layer as well. And that's how you either redirect a blend or change its speed by editing its spine here inside Illustrator.